Good morning once again. Welcome to First Center for Spiritual Living. I want to welcome all the people on the Zoom call who are here for the first time. And any of you who might be watching on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube this week, please send us a message so we can invite you into our Zoom call. And that's the best way to interact with us, so we can get to know you in person. I know Reverend Judith just did a wonderful treatment. I have one for Raymond Charles Barker. Maybe I'll keep that to the end. So I think I'll do that. And it's very powerful. It's particularly good for Father's Day. So I'm going to move then to, at First Church of Religious Science, which is, we call ourselves First Church of Religious Science New York, also First Center for Spiritual Living. Always was sung or read a passage. Peace be unto thee, stranger. Enter and be not afraid. The table is laid and the fruits of life are spread before you. All is yours and you are welcome. Let us celebrate the presence of one another here today. And you can greet each other in your own way, look around the room or in the chat room. And, with this consciousness of namaste, recognizing the spirit or the good in each person. So I see you all. I recognize the spirit in each of you. So you are welcome and good morning. If you're visiting us for the first time, please indicate when we do our sharing, say, hello, I'm from wherever. And we want to extend you our very special welcome. In religious science, we realize that we are always students, which is one of the reasons I brought up all the class options today. You can take, again, certified accredited classes if you want to go on to become a practitioner or a minister, or you can take our life learning classes. We have many science of mind classes of all different kinds, and self-improvement classes. We're always in the business of trading in the lesser ideas. So we come here to be reminded of the truth of who we are, what we are, and we remind you that the universe is giving you all green lights. We're in a process of learning more and more about ourselves and about life. Life and consciousness are always in an unfolding action, right? They're always unfolding, taking place through us. Therefore, there's always more to know and learn. And the more we learn, usually the more we want to learn. Today, welcome Rupert, is Father's Day. And it's always the third Sunday in June. It's a time of remembrance of the gifts that we have received from our father figures. And I say that because there's a lot of people who maybe didn't have a relationship with their fathers directly, but they had relationships with their uncles, older brothers, grandfathers. But before we get into Father's Day, there's another holiday that lands on this weekend also, and we want to mention it. It's called Juneteenth. And some of you who don't know about it, some of you do know about it. It's become more popular in recent years. Last year it was made into a national holiday. Many Americans across the nation are celebrating it. And I had to look up. I knew of it in my mind, but I didn't know as much as I do now. Juneteenth is a holiday commemorating the freedom of slaves in the United States. There's a flag, which I think Anthony might have to put on the screen. There it is. Well, the part in yellow the flag is beneath the part in yellow. So it's blue and red with a white star. And the date on it was June 19th, 1865. The name Juneteenth is a combination of the words June and 19th. The day is also referred by many as Emancipation Day and Freedom Day. And so I did a little research so you don't have to. This is going to become more and more of a known and popular holiday now that it's become a national holiday. It's celebrated now, I think, well, throughout the country since it's become a national holiday. Texas first made it a state holiday in 1980, and it's been gaining traction and recognition, especially in the 50s and 60s. Over the years, It's been called many things. People have referred to it as Jubilee Day, Freedom Day, Liberation Day, Emancipation Day, and again now a holiday, national holiday. And how do you celebrate it? Well, that's entirely up to you. You can celebrate it with your family. You can celebrate it parades, barbecues, marches. Many people get together for ceremonies, prayer, and the raising of the Juneteenth flag is another ceremonial thing that a lot of people are doing. A little bit about the history. I was rusty on this, I have to admit, until I started reading this week. The Emancipation Proclamation was issued by President Lincoln, and I thought that was the document which ended slavery, which in fact it was, but just because the document is signed, it doesn't mean it, right? It took a few years for all of it to come together. The Emancipation Proclamation was just the beginning. So if you go back and you read, and you can find yourself reading for hours, which I thought, well, I have to stop here, educating myself. You'll learn that the Emancipation Proclamation was the beginning. It didn't immediately end slavery. We've all heard of executive orders, like any president will make an executive order. Well, it was an executive order, but for it to filter down and go to all parts of the country, that took a little bit of time. One thing about it is it did pave the way for the 13th Amendment, and if you don't know what the 13th Amendment is, that was decided by Congress. This wouldn't be just the president, this would be the entire Congress on December 6th of 1865. And the 13th Amendment was about slavery. It said, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime where you've been convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place under the United States jurisdiction. So the Emancipation Proclamation preceded the 13th Amendment, as most of you know. Slaves were not set free in the South until the Union or Northern Army was able to come in and take over. A little bit of my notes from the weekend. In 1865, the Union Army arrived at Galveston, Texas. The next day, June 19th, General George Granger announced that the slaves in Texas were free by order of the President of the United States. The 13th Amendment was to come 6 months later. The former slaves in Galveston now celebrate the day that they were set free. So that's how the date was established. The first June 19th celebration took place that very next year. So that's a little bit of the history. 1980, it became a Texas holiday. It started to filter around to the other states early in the century, but it was in the 1950s through 60s, it started becoming more known in different states, and now a national holiday. So our center, our church, is closed in honor of Juneteenth tomorrow. A few people are coming in doing work, which they can, but we're officially honoring the holiday. Fun facts about Juneteenth: it's the oldest known holiday that commemorates the end of slavery in the United States. Juneteenth is now the title of 3 or 4 books. I told you there's a flag, Juneteenth flag of freedom, which I showed you. So, I was told it's appropriate to say to people, Happy Juneteenth, because I didn't know how you recognize it. So Happy Juneteenth, everybody. Yeah, right? So now we move back to our other holiday, which you would probably expected for today. Today is Father's Day. It's Father's Day in the United States and Canada, Britain. And Father's Day is celebrated on different days throughout. It's a big holiday throughout the world. But for us in Canada and Britain, it's celebrated today. Different days for other countries. So as I was researching this week, I came to understand that Father's Day is not really a very big church day throughout the country. Surprise, surprise. It's the least attended day in church of the calendar year of everything, which I thought, fathers got short shrift here. Mother's Day is far more popular. Church and spiritual centers are challenged with the best way to honor fathers, or even to get people into the church on that Sunday. I started reading columns this week where pastors did exclaim. It was usually their lowest attendance, as I said, and they had all kinds of theories as to why. One of which is a good number of the people had complicated relationships with their fathers. And I thought, well, there's a lot of people who had complicated relationships with their mother too, but they still come in on Mother's Day. Then I remember there was a great column by Irma von Beck, because in the Reader's Digest years ago, and just about every pastor in America would always refer to that column. And I was looking for it for about 2 days because it was often republished. I finally found a copy of it. It was published in the Saturday Evening Post again. And once I found it, I realized, okay, then there's a bunch of articles why you can't use it anymore. Because she used adjectives and words to describe gender and men and women that you would no longer find socially acceptable in this new age that we live in. And I thought, gosh, this is such a good article, but you'd have to go in and correct it all, and then it wouldn't even be the same. So then someone wrote a revised, it's like Irma coming down from heaven, explaining, the revision of the words. So it became too convoluted for me to read it to you today, because I would probably be inappropriate with today's languaging about men and women. So I kept on looking. You can look that one up for yourself, though. It's pretty easily found. Irma von Beck, by the way, was a phenomena in America. And people my age, or people younger than me, so I'll say people maybe 45 or 50 would probably remember her. For anyone born after 1995, she was a humorist. She wrote 15 books. Can you imagine? Over 4,000 columns using humor, chronicling her everyday ordinary life in America. She had 30 million readers and over 900 newspapers. And I always go back to her things, and she'll have something about men, something about women, something about children, something about just the common stuff. If you think of Mark Twain of an earlier age, she was a person who could find humor in all kinds of things. I did locate another essay of hers that would be less controversial. It starts out, it's about fathers. That's the reason I used it today. When I was a kid, a father was like the light inside of a refrigerator. Every house had one, but nobody knew what either of them did once the door was shut. My dad left the house every morning and always seemed glad to see everyone at night. He opened the jar of pickles when nobody else could. He was the only one in the house who wasn't afraid to go in the basement by himself. He cut himself shaving, but no one kissed it or got excited about it. It was understood whenever it rained, he got the car and brought it around to the front door. When anyone was sick, he got the prescriptions filled. He set the mouse traps. He cut back the roses so the thorns wouldn't clip you when you came to the front door. And when I got a bike, he ran alongside me for at least 1,000 miles until I got the hang of it. I was afraid of everyone else's father, but not my own. Once I made him tea. It was only sugar water, but he sat in a small chair and he said it was delicious. When I played house, the mother doll had a lot to do. I never knew what to do with the daddy doll, so I had him say, "I'm going off to work now," and threw him under the bed. When I was 9 years old, my father didn't get up one morning and go to work. He went to the hospital and he died the next day. I went to my room and felt under my bed for the daddy doll. When I found him, I dusted him off and put him on my bed. He never did anything. I didn't know his leaving would hurt so much. I still don't know why. And now, we know the loss of father is a big thing in our lives. I remember my father's passing. It kind of hit me harder than my mother, probably because my mother's illness, it was more extended. Today's an opportunity for us to remember and celebrate our dads. Some of you have sent Jimmy emails and text messages. It's going to be a time for you to remember something wonderful about your father. And I know there's probably things that weren't wonderful. I can speak to that side too. But today's a day to remember how they touched you. And again, it can be whatever father figure or an older brother, you know what I'm saying. We're going to give you an opportunity to memorialize them today. If there's something positive you'd like to say, so send it in the chat. Also, Jimmy will get them, and you can share them, or you'll be able to talk about it afterwards. We've already received a few, and we look forward to a few more. Some of you might call Mark Twain one of our greatest humorists. And regarding fathers, he said, "When I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to be about 21, I was astonished at how much the old man had learned in 7 years." And that seems to be true with me. I can remember a time where I thought my father was terrible, and then as I got older, it's just like it all changed. So I hope some of you are sending in things you remember about your dad, sending them into Jimmy in the chat, or maybe you've already sent by email. I learned many things from my father that I always reflect upon on Father's Day. It's tougher to say who had a bigger impact on me, my mother or my father, but today is the day we focus on our dads. We used to call him Pop. Other people call him, I've heard people, the old man, the daddy, many, many names. We celebrate them, what they gave us. Could be our natural fathers, adopted fathers, or any of these other guys. Before I begin about Father's Day, the holiday itself, it got off to a bumpy start. It seems to be a holiday that people celebrate, but again, it was a big one in our life. I'm sure most of you, though, have memories about these guys, and so I want us to think about them now, at least, and in our own consciousness, the whole congregation, thank them for a moment. Thank them for what they gave you. Let today be a day where we realize how much they in their own way loved you. Let's breathe that in, take that in. We know that their impact was important and very significant. Today, let us cherish those good memories for these father figures who, in a very real way, live on and are with us. My father was a Catholic, right? My parents were. And in some ways, I think he acted like a religious scientist because he delighted in the talks and the cassettes that I used to bring home from the religious science centers, the teachings of Dr. Bill Tolliver and Raymond Charles Barker. When I was in my early teens, probably like 12, I started reading books like from people like Zig Ziglar, Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie, books like Think and Grow Rich. I ate them up. My father delighted in them, and he kept giving me these kinds of books and talking to me about them. He was a person with very big ideas. He was very successful. He didn't always execute everything perfectly, and that was a good example for me too, because no one really does. But he was always aiming high. And this is really consistent with what we teach here, to aim high. Because if your sights are low, you're going to just bring in, you're approaching life with small buckets. So my dad was always encouraging all of us to aim high. I fondly remember him learning to fly a plane in his 50s and learning to speak a new language too, I believe. Spanish he became very proficient in his mid-60s. And I recall one afternoon I stopped by the house in his 70s, and I had taught him already, this is going back a few years, how to use a computer, use email. And I asked him that day, what was he doing? And he was a salesman all through his life, or business owner. And he said, "I'm refining my closing skills." And I just shook my head. I thought, what kind of person is refining their closing skills in their 70s? I'm like, are you going to go out and start selling some? But, it was nothing new because he was always involved in a project of some kind or multiple projects. From the time as a kid and long before, Louise Hay advised us to never use the word should. People enjoy, this my father shared with me, people enjoy being led, but they don't like being told what to do. So I've always remembered that. You give people choices. My dad thought of sales as a noble profession as long as you're helping guide people in making decisions. So whatever you're offering, whatever you're selling, we have many school teachers on our call, you give people choices. So you try not to tell them what they should do. You could say, okay, well, Susan, you could try this, or maybe you'd like to try that. You lead people, but you try not to tell them what to do. I learned from him that I need to believe in whatever I'm doing and see if it might be good for the person I'm talking to. In many ways, a good religious science minister is a good salesperson because they're presenting wonderful ideas. They're excited about their ideas. One of the main things we do is teach people how to trade in lesser ideas for greater. Because we all have all these old ideas that don't serve us anymore, what things should be like and what people should be like. And so we're in the business of letting go of a lot of that. As we learn in this teaching that we are always one with a loving, absolute Father who always has our back. My father gave me a copy of the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was younger. It was one of the best finance books of all time, by the way. And the author had a story of growing up with two fathers. The real father was an engineer and highly educated, but he referred to him as the poor father. And the author shared about how these two men shaped his life. So we've got the rich father, who is the guy who's the entrepreneur, who's the business person, who's the trader. And we have the poor dad, who was the person who was the engineer and highly educated. And both of these individuals shaped his life. And in the same way, the book, my father and mother believed greatly in education. So I got one, and as did all my siblings. But my dad was telling me the good you're going to receive is not going to come directly from your education. In the book, the author's real father, again, was an engineer, and Robert Kiyosaki said his father, the engineer, again, was the poor dad. And the other father, who was in the world interacting, creating things, right, was the rich father. So the story goes, to make sure I'm making the point, the engineer working for a company placed his sense of safety in his career advancement and his job. And the other father knew security is never found there. So this was an exciting book. I recommend it for everybody now. It's been reprinted many times. I recall my dad was always teaching me with books like this. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich. And this was done since I was about 10 or 12. And as a result, it seems I always got involved in bigger and bigger projects from an early age, and multiple projects. I managed many buildings and properties. And whatever success I ever achieved allowed me to create and support new thought centers and churches, because that was my real passion. I have a sister who I remember, in contrast, always was needing and wanting to be perfect, and she found security in her identity in her job alone. And my dad was a little bit worried about her. She'd be a little bit more like the engineer, the dad who was, all the success could be found in the education. I remember talking to my father about her, and he was greatly concerned about her, because wherever she lost her job, and she was out of work for a year, 6 months or a year, she was falling apart. So my dad was worried about her. Another thing I remember about him, which some of you can relate to because it's what we teach here. When I was a young boy, my father said to me, "You are a corporation of one. You are the decider in your own life." That's a big idea. That was a science of mind idea. And I was getting it from a person who didn't really know science of mind. Your security comes from the inside. Whatever you know inside is going to play outside. You're never going to get this from another person or from a job. So he said, please don't lull yourself into thinking your security is in the job. I don't think my dad worried about me so much as my sisters, despite the fact that I was always in situations, more so than my sister. I remember I've told this story once before. I remember fishing in a stream with him when I was a kid and catching my first fish. We're standing on top of a waterfall, a dam, and I caught the fish and I fell down the dam right in the water. Somehow or another, about a half a mile down the stream, he caught up with me and pulled me out, and I was still hanging on to the fish. And I must confess, this was just the beginning of many adventures that I put that person through. Throughout the years and all the ups and downs, he was always helping me gain perspective. And like Mark Twain stated, my father seemed to get better and smarter as I got older. He was offering guidance in a series of choices always. He never told me what to do, though he was always guiding me in a direction. He would always tell me, it's your decision. My mother's famous line is, it's entirely up to you. So those are great, powerful lines for parents. I never remember him being a worrier at all. That's one thing about it. He just didn't worry. If he worried, we never saw it or felt it, though I'm sure he must have had his moments because there were 6 of us and my mother, and that was a lot to manage. He was a person of great faith, and he was fine with me being of another faith. My mother was different. I recall him one time saying to my mother, who was decidedly more traditional, he said, if you two would take the time to understand what Greg is learning, you wouldn't have any problem with it. So I've come to know people who have a lot of fear can be paralyzed and stuck with fear, and it can be debilitating. I just look within my own family. That kind of fear can bring on mental illness of all kinds. You can stay stuck. My father said to me early on, whatever is going on with you, your mother and I always want to know. So he didn't practice avoidance. He trusted that the right circumstances would come about if the situation was handled intelligently and if we had faith. I did not realize it, but for decades of interacting with him, I was depositing valuables in a spiritual bank account that's always available to me. I draw from it every day, even now. And I'm just living on the interest of all those deposits. The good news for each of us is that regardless of our earthly parentage or the kind of parenting, whatever you learned from your father, because of them, you grew and you continue to grow. I keep using the information and the lessons that were given to me from him. Raymond Charles Barker, founder of this center, this church, when asked about a supply issue regarding the building, the church is always, by the way, dealing with financial issues. This year we're dealing with a stock market that's crumbling. So Barker had his own version of that too. Dr. Barker said he knew that he can afford these things when he was, working on the building, replying he had a rich father. And having that sense, with that awareness, he knew he was connected to unlimited source. This teaching advances the idea that you are one with life. I remember Reverend Ike, who we all are fond of, on Father's Day. I remember him today with his great saying, which I quote often, you can't lose with the stuff we use. And then I remember something that's going to really date me, and probably only the people who are older will remember the honeymooners, Jackie Gleason, Ralph Cramden. His famous line to his wife, Alice, stick with me, Alice, I'm going places. To the top. That was funny. He was funny. My father used to say that to my mother, and she would just shake her head, right? What sticks with me all these years later, when someone has that kind of faith, he really had a lot of confidence. They will be going places, because if you have that kind of confidence, nothing can stop you. All the world awaits your decision. In a real sense, along with an often recited message from E. Cummins, my dad used to say to my mother often too, come grow old along with me, the best is yet to be. That was who he was. And these are really big ideas that he taught all of his children. And they were being offered up every single day. Naturally, with all of that type of information, I would be attracted to a teaching such as this, which is open at the top. I was being presented with these ideas all the time. And I can't wait to hear about the empowering words that you might recall from any of your father figures, your grandfathers, your older brothers, your uncles. What words helped shape you? Now, we could all remember some of the negative stuff, but today is their day. So we're trying to remember the gifts that they presented us. And as we wind down here today, being full of gratitude for our fathers, I want to congratulate any of the men that are listening today or present who are working to be good father figures of some kind in your communities with your own kids or with other kids. My father gave me the greatest gift anyone could ever give another person. He believed in me. I want to congratulate all the men out there who are doing this important work. And again, thanks to my father who gave me this great gift. And as we close, I believe in each one of you, and I know this teaching works, and it will do great things for anyone who will be open. And so I'll end with what my dad used to say to my sister in particular, but to me also. The universe is sending you all green lights, and so it is for this morning. Thank you.